Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're wading into some incredibly fascinating and honestly slightly surreal territory.
Yes, very surreal.
We got this whole stack of sources in front of us, psychological journals, case studies, and some really deep analyses of Freudian psychoanalysis and dream interpretation.
It is a lot of heavy reading, for sure.
It is. And our mission today is to sort of map out the architecture of the unconscious mind. But, we aren't going to do it by just reading you a textbook.
No, the unconscious doesn't really speak in bullet points.
Exactly. It speaks in symbols, in spaces. So one of the primary papers we're looking at uses this brilliant, vivid thought experiment to explain how we build mental boundaries. And I want to start by just dropping you, the listener, right into the middle of it.
It's the perfect way to begin. I mean, we really need to step into the landscape.
Right. Okay, so imagine this. You are standing in a corridor, but this corridor breathes. Yeah. And I don't mean that it's just a metaphor. The walls are actually expanding and contracting, just slightly. It's not, the hallway where you hang your coat after work. It's a place with absolutely no memory of you.
But somehow your feet know its exact length.
Yes. Your shoulders automatically dip to avoid a low beam that isn't even physically there. The air isn't warm or cold. It's just, it's the exact temperature of waiting.
The temperature of something suspended between breaths. What the authors are illustrating here is the landscape of our own repressed mind.
It feels completely alien.
It does, yet our bodies instinctively know the geography because, we built it. And for you, listening, our third traveler in this space today, I want you to imagine looking down at your own hand in this corridor. Feel the weight of what has just appeared there.
Right, because the exercise continues with you holding a key. You didn't pick it up, you didn't buy it. It's just nestled in your palm like it grew there.
Like a second bone.
Exactly, like a second bone beneath the skin. Heavy, cold, and the teeth are worn completely smooth, like it's been turned in 1,000 locks. Now, my first instinct, and probably anyone's instinct, is to think, great, a key. Let's go find the treasure. What am I unlocking?
But our sources argue that this is entirely the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how we are so conditioned to view these mental symbols. We assume a key is strictly a tool for access. We think the journey of self-discovery is about finding out what is hidden behind the door at the end of the hall.
But it's not.
No. When we look at Freudian theory, the mission shifts. We aren't necessarily trying to discover what lies beyond the wood. The real question is, what have we been carrying around that made us believe a door needed opening in the first place?
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is a bit of a mind bender. If the key isn't about opening a door to find something new, what is it? I mean, in the visualization, there is a literal door at the end of this breathing hallway.
Yes, there is.
It's described as wood, the color of dried earth, with a keyhole shaped like a dilated pupil. And you just know the key fits, even if it looks mismatched. It's this automatic pull, like a ton finding the gap of a missing tooth. Are you saying the door and the key are just distractions?
Not distractions, but they represent a different kind of psychological mechanism entirely. Think about the physical shape of the key in this thought experiment. It isn't a standard, jagged piece of brass.
Right. The text describes it as organic.
Exactly. If you closed your eyes, its curves would feel like a hip or the slope of a shoulder blade. It exists in the muscle memory of touch. Psychologically speaking, the key is shaped like the space a loved one leaves behind when they turn away.
Oh, wow.
It represents our coping mechanisms, the heavy things we carry to deal with loss, rejection, or trauma.
So wait, the key is the baggage. It's the coping mechanism we actually developed to deal with an absence.
Precisely. And that visceral hum you described, that feeling of knowing the key fits the lock before you even try it, that is what Freudians call repetition compulsion.
Repetition compulsion.
Yes. It's the psychological drive to repeat past traumas or patterns. You know exactly how the key fits because you've subconsciously rehearsed the scenario thousands of times.
That makes so much sense. It's like when people say, well, why do I keep dating the exact same type of toxic person? Or why do I keep picking fights when things are going well?
Yes, exactly that.
Your brain has this key, this heavy coping mechanism, and it goes out into the world desperately looking for the exact lock that fits it, even if the room behind the door is an absolute disaster.
You are trying to resolve an old wound in a new setting. And as you lift your hand to insert the key into this hypothetical door, notice what happens. The texts emphasize that the key hesitates at the threshold.
It kisses the edge of the hole and stops.
It's recognition.
Yeah, one of the dream logs in the research described this part so vividly. The patient said inserting the key felt like two strangers meeting in a dream who realized they've known each other forever.
It's a profound feeling.
You twist your wrist, but it's not a conscious decision. It's pure muscle memory. It reminded me of, and this sounds silly, but twisting a stubborn jar lid when you're a kid, or opening a forbidden book you hid from your parents. Your body just knows the exact torque required.
It doesn't sound silly at all. That somatic memory, the body remembering what the conscious mind tries so hard to forget, is a cornerstone of psychoanalysis.
Right.
When that metaphorical key enters the dark throat of the lock, half of it vanishes into the mechanism and half remains in your hand. This illustrates the splitting of the psyche. Part of you is engaged in the present moment, but a massive part of you has slipped back into the unconscious, into the past.
And the research points out that the wood around this keyhole is covered in faint grooves, scratch marks from countless past insertions, which led to this incredible pushback in the paper. What if all those previous attempts weren't trying to open the door at all?
Yes.
What if they were trying to lock it, to seal a sound inside?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of trauma and repression, that is often exactly what is happening. We assume our psychological struggles are efforts to break through or open up, but very often our anxiety and our repetitive behaviors are frantic attempts to keep a door shut.
Because we are terrified of what might escape.
Precisely. We want to keep it contained.
I can almost feel the tension of that.
Yeah.
Because in the thought experiment, when you actually start to turn the key, it doesn't grind like metal. It whispers. It feels like silk dragging over skin. And with every quarter turn, you don't get pictures in your mind. You get physical sensations just flooding your blood.
And what kind of sensations do the patients report?
Really specific, weirdly heavy ones. One person felt the sensation of a blanket pulled over their head when they were 7 years old. That suffocating but completely wholly safe feeling.
Yes.
Another felt the metallic catch of a zipper on a dress they wore to a party where they felt completely out of place. Another heard the soft, forbidding thud of their father's study drawer closing, a sound that just screamed, "Do not enter."
What is happening there is a translation of the psyche. Remember, the lock is not a mechanical device. It is an archive. And the turning of the key brings the unconscious directly into the physical body. It's bypassing logic entirely.
But here is where the thought experiment takes a really dark turn. At the three-quarter turn, the environment shifts. The floor turns to packed earth. It smells like damp soil and lilies left way too long in a vase.
The smell of the day's silence entered a childhood home.
Exactly. The exact smell of a funeral or a day something terrible happened. And the person holding the key feels this crushing emotional resistance. The lock suddenly doesn't want to open.
Why do you think that is? What does the opening represent?
Well, the paper argues that opening the door means exposure. It means you finally have to admit there is a hunger you've spent your whole life feeding with cheap distractions, or a wound you've covered up with a fancy job and achievements.
The key is physically trembling.
Yeah, but the fear isn't coming from the conscious mind. It's coming from the unconscious mechanism itself.
Yes. The defense mechanism realizes its job is almost over, and that is terrifying. To understand why this is so frightening, the researchers ask us to step away from the door and follow that trembling back to its origin, back to a much earlier, much smaller turning of the wrist.
Right.
They use a brilliant case study of childhood boundary formation. Picture being 4 or 5 years old, standing on tiptoe, pressing your belly against your mother's dresser drawer.
The forbidden second drawer. The one with the things you really aren't supposed to touch. Silk slipping through your fingers, maybe a heavy, dangerous-looking leather strap, a cold jar of face cream that smells like night and skin.
Exactly. The child reaches in. The textures are intoxicating, and then the mother's heavy voice comes from the doorway. What are you doing?
The kid's hand just freezes. They're totally suspended between wanting to touch the forbidden things and needing to obey. Now, my immediate thought reading this was, okay, the kid is traumatized because they got yelled at for exploring. But the psychoanalysts completely flip that assumption on its head, don't they?
They do. This is a profound, non-clinical translation of Freud's theories on the formation of the ego. The theory suggests that the child did not actually want the objects in the drawer.
Wait, really? Because, I mean, kids grab everything.
They do, but what they are fundamentally seeking in the specific scenario is to be caught.
To be caught.
Yes. They want the mother's shadow to fall over them. They want the parent's hand to close gently over theirs and say, "This is not for you." They are actively soliciting a boundary.
That is wild. You're saying kids seek out rules. Because it feels like we spend our whole childhood fighting boundaries.
Consciously, yes, we fight them, but unconsciously, a world without boundaries is terrifying to a developing mind. It's a void. The child needs the parent to define the edges of reality. The true psychological wound of childhood in this scenario wasn't being locked out of the adult world.
Then what was it?
The wound occurs when the boundary isn't set properly, or when the parent reacts with their own buried longing and neurotic anxiety, forcing the child to absorb the adult's unspoken baggage. In those cases, the child is left to hold the metaphorical key alone.
Without anyone to witness the turning.
Exactly. Without a safe authority figure there to tell them when to stop.
Okay, let me make sure I have this straight. The lock softening beneath our palm in the breathing corridor.
Yeah.
It represents that childhood boundary, that trembling membrane between myself and the outside world.
Precisely. It is the pre-sexual primal origin of boundaries. In the architecture of the psyche, the key acts as an extension of will, a metaphorical phallus if we're leaning into classical Freud, entering and turning. But the lock is not just a passive barrier.
It's an active receiver.
Yes. It waits for the precise patient pressure that communicates, I know your secret shape.
So what does this actually mean for us as adults walking around today? Because as I read that, it hit me that we spent our entire lives rehearsing this exact childhood dance. It reminded me of playing hide and seek. Have you ever hidden in a dark closet, surrounded by coats, just holding your breath?
Certainly. It's a universal childhood experience.
Right. And you sit there with your hand hovering over the latch, but you aren't actually fantasizing about opening the door yourself and escaping. The thrill is the fantasy of the door being opened from the outside. You want the rescuer to flood the darkness with light.
Because to open the door yourself is to admit you hold the power and the ultimate isolation of the key. That's a very heavy burden. We often want the lock turned by another's will. We want someone else to take responsibility for crossing the threshold.
And that explains so much of adult behavior. I mean, this is exactly why people pursue emotionally unavailable lovers, or why we grind endlessly at impossible careers where the boss will never actually give us the validation we want. We are literally building these massive psychological corridors just to recreate the drama of the approach.
We crave that almost touching state, because the truth is, the room beyond the door is never actually as compelling as that silent prayer whispered to the wood. We are addicted to the threshold.
We really are. We love the talking stage of dating, but freak out when it becomes a committed relationship. We dream about writing a book, but never actually finish the final chapter. It's the poetry of repression.
That is a fantastic way to phrase it.
Our unconscious mind disguises our fear of intimacy as reverence for the goal.
The poetry of repression. By standing before the locked door, you satisfy two opposing, deeply held wishes at the very same time. First, you experience the thrilling proximity to the forbidden. You're holding the key, you are right at the door.
Yeah.
But second, you maintain the absolute safety of remaining the obedient child who does not cross the line. You worship the boundary.
Our brains are basically dramatic teenagers just hovering at the edge of the party, but too scared to actually walk in.
Essentially, yes. We construct elaborate labyrinth of self-sabotage simply to avoid the terrifying responsibility of walking through the door.
So how does the thought experiment end? Let's go back to the corridor. You're at the door. The key is in the lock. And with a deep exhale, without even forcing it, the key finally completes its rotation.
And what happens?
Well, there is no sharp click. There's no satisfying mechanical sound of access granted. It's just a soft sigh, like ice becoming water. The key is fully turned, motionless, waiting. But the door never swings open.
It never does. In the gray-blue hour of the unconscious, doors do not swing open like they do in a living room.
You just stand there, hand on the key. And the text describes the single drop of dark sap forming at the edge of the keyhole. It falls onto the back of your hand, it seeps into your skin with a spreading warmth that feels entirely like forgiveness.
That imagery of sap, of organic forgiveness, represents a major psychological breakthrough. In that moment of deep psychoanalysis, we finally see the truth. The door has no hinges. It is not a barrier at all.
It's a porous membrane.
Yes. The psychoanalytic theory posits that the original lock was a cervix. The original room was the absolute warm containment of the womb, which we were all expelled from into the cold light of separation. Every door, every boundary, every unrequited love you have chased since that moment has been an unconscious attempt to return to the sensation of being perfectly held.
That is so heavy, but it's also incredibly liberating. It means the key was never meant to pierce the door. It was just meant to remind us that we are already inside. The boundary completely dissolved the moment we chose to stand before it in reverence. We were never really locked out.
The lock exists not to keep you out, but to give the moment of recognition its meaning. We create the lock so we have something to overcome. And so, to you, listening to us break down this fascinating space, feel the metaphorical stone in your own pocket. Think about the repetitive patterns and the baggage you carry.
Yeah, what closed doors in your life are you completely exhausting yourself trying to unlock?
Exactly. What if they are not meant to be opened at all? What if your greatest mysteries, your deepest anxieties, are simply meant to be witnessed, honored in their closedness, until you finally realize the hand holding the key is the only home you ever needed? Something to think about the next time you find yourself standing at a threshold.